There comes a time in every single man's life where you make audacious statements. Check me out in the next 5 years, I'll be successful. And once that time frame exceeds, not only are you not successful, you have no result to show for every single effort, all of the time wasted. And you sit and look at yourself as a loser. As you'll be learning in tonight's discourse, you quickly come to the conclusion that this deficiency is not always as a consequence of laziness or indecision or lack of discipline. It's something far more. What I'm about to give is like a cheat code to an examination. And if you know anything about examinations, if you receive cheat codes, you would pass in flying colors. For you to qualify in that sentence, you have to learn as well as apply what you received. Acting upon the cheat codes is what guarantees success. Conversely, if you receive the cheat code, dump it, procrastinate. One day I will do it. Guess what happens? Your results might parallel with someone who didn't receive that cheat code. And we could also decorticate the argument. We could also analyze it from the other angle. There are individuals who do not receive any kind of cheat code, but through sheer persistence, as a consequence of diligence, rigor, burning late night candles, they still have the same results with someone who received cheat codes. But the difference between the two examples is one is able to conserve more energy because his attention is directed. There are focus areas of study as opposed to the other guy who's beating his hand around waters, studying everything. The other guy's attention is concentrated on a body of knowledge, and if he knows what he's doing, if he persists, if he studies that material, I guarantee you he would exceed expectations. So in the two experience, most times their results might parallel, but the difference is in the conservation of energy. And anyone will tell you in any successful person will share in any journey. Speed only finds expression when there's direction. Speed is an advantage to any journey. Say you're going from here to the mall and you have no GPS or any kind of locator, just your first time. What's the first thing you do? You reduce your speed. Even if you were to, let's grant, you fired upon all four cylinders, you would still stop at some point to ask questions. Excuse me, sir, how can I get to XYZ place? So no matter how fast you're moving, you would invariably have to stop to ask questions. Is in that stopping those various encounters, perhaps you might be speaking to a drug dealer or murderer or someone laced with all shades of crimes and makes you a victim. But had you known the direction beforehand, all of this experience would be far from your domain. Now, am I against direction in general? That's far from it. In fact, I would rather you calm down, reduce your speed, humble yourself, ask questions, as opposed to speed in ignorance. Speed, speed. So the point I'm trying to highlight today is how to get through adversity. And tonight's discourse is tailored towards two kinds of individuals. The first are the ones who are yet to begin their journey to success. This is why I made the whole statement of cheat code. So tonight's discourse would act as cheat towards the examination you're about to write. You see, this game of life, at the infancy of your pursuit towards success, you are excited on this journey. It's most likely you're coming from a point of depression, anxiety, or lowly estate where nothing has been working. Finally, you have a shot at life. Finally, you can do something with your destiny. Finally, it's possible for you to build that dream life. And you're excited. But if you fail to learn the caveats, the teachings, the consequence of pursuing a good life, it's most likely you won't finish. You would get weary, you would make all kinds of mistakes, you would have the wrong perception about things. I've spoken at length on perception and how it shapes your destiny. You and I can look at the flag. One might feel disgusted, the other patriotic. So the same object of focus, but different perception. And if we are to act based upon that visual, our result will be vastly apart. So what's the difference? The same object, the same site, perhaps the same angle, but different results as a consequence of interpretation. So how you interpret things is more important than the thing itself. Your interpretation of circumstance is what decides the next level of your destiny. So do well to check that out. But perception is key. I recall one time, my first time in the gym, and after a brutal workout section, I woke up the next day swollen and sore. I had to rush to the trainer in my next session and I said, my hands are sore. I look as though this is elephantiasis, or is this some kind of medical condition? Why is my body reacting to this in a negative way? It was so bad that the night before I prayed about it. I asked God to deliver me from any kind of witchcraft. So you see, a natural process, because it was foreign to my level of understanding, I quickly interpreted it as wrong, which is the exact same route most of you take. Let's be honest, humans are trained to see more negativity than positivity. You are quick to associate an experience to negative outcomes as opposed to otherwise. That's how the human mind works. It's not a moral argument. It's as objective as the law of gravity, of which he explained to me is the normal process. This is how it works. Imagine that guy was not in my life. Perhaps that would have been the end of my fitness journey. So perception is important, and you cannot have the right perception on a subject without the requisite body of knowledge received from an individual competent enough to dispense. Perception. So that's the first kind of people, individuals who are yet to start this journey, very excited to do something with their life. And in fact, I commend you for the fact that you're seeing this kind of content is an indicator you're going to be successful. The fact is not gossip, it's not some drag queen, it's not some stupid shit on social media popping on your feed. It's your content that's supposed to edify as well as improve your knowledge on certain subjects. It's a clear indicator you're going to be successful. So those are the first kind of people this applies to. The second are individuals. One second. For those of you who know me, I used to record in a very small apartment with shitty devices. So sometimes after a 30-40 minute rant on teaching, I will get up exhausted only to discover the microphone was turned off. And guess what? I have to redo the content. So it's almost like a muscle memory to always check my devices, although I am now competent enough as well as sustain more advanced materials to enhance my recording. So that's by the way. The second kind of people are individuals who have started this journey of success. They are in the middle phase. The middle phase is usually the hardest. The middle phase is where you need my teaching on interpretation, on perception rather. This is something you need to settle down with and listen. It's as though you take those contents like pills in the similitude of swallowing drugs. You get up in the morning, you listen to the video on perception. You get up in the afternoon, you listen to the second part on perception. You repeat that process to take you to ensure that you gain victory. And some peasants in the comment section will be, oh, he's promoting his teaching so he gets a lot of views, which generates ad revenue. My friend, you're fucking stupid. That's one. Number two, I've shared it countlessly. Always devise a situation where it's a win-win. To the degree the other individual wins, it's none of your business. I tell my staffs all the time, if you do business with XYZ and the person profits more than you, as long as you got what you came for, it's none of your business. Let's say, for instance, my ulterior motive was ad revenue, but you achieved your goal, you achieved your desire. It helped you get through that difficult phase in your life. Do you still care? Exactly. Please understand. Let's say ad revenue was the goal, but the content helped get you from point A to point B. Do you still care? Exactly. Always create a win-win situation, a win-win scenario. To the degree the other person won, it's none of your business. So thirdly, there are the top 1%, like myself, who love to do it all on their own. They hate this idea of listening to motivational teachings, uh, getting past a phase, you relying on external things like content or things of that sort. But my friend, you're engaging in this difficult process from a lens of ego, also from a lens of entrepreneurship. And I'll explain to you what I mean by this. So the first one is self-explanatory. You want to do it all yourself. You desire to take all the glory. You bask in the idea. Nobody helped me. I didn't listen to motivational content. I don't need XYZ to get off my bed. I don't need this person to do what I'm supposed to do. And of course, it's a phenomenal mindset. I love the way you think. But in a journey, like I explained, it is better So ask questions, ask for help. It's not written on your forehead. I listened to Ifeanyi Ernest and he got me through this difficult phase. No, ask for help where you can and scale past. And of course, do not take it to the extreme. If you keep asking for help always, it dilutes your influence, it dampens your creativity, it robs you of the ability to think for yourself. That's why I'm very measured in using AI tools. AI tools would explain to me a subject I do not understand. It doesn't replace my thinking. You know, in the days of old, we would have to consume gruesome materials only to find two, three sentences of what we truly want. But with AI, it can help distill that information, present it into a ready package. That's what I use AI for. In fact, that's the correct use of artificial intelligence. Not to get to a point where AI substitutes for my thinking, substitutes for my creativity. No, heaven forbid. So that's the first one, ego. The second is an entrepreneurship mindset, the mindset of an entrepreneur. As an entrepreneur, we are used to difficulty. We are used to taking the hard way. We love effort because in difficulty comes a story. We love the hardest way possible, which is good. It builds character. As I've shared, taking anything to the extreme is disadvantageous. Sugar sweetens your tea, but it also engenders diabetes. So taking anything to the extreme is not always in your best interest. Always learn to have a measured approach towards any kind of activity you engage in. Like our examples, asking for help. In this situation, taking the hard path, always trying to make it difficult, is a very stupid thing to do. For instance, in one of my companies, I do not have a background in cybersecurity. I took a course just to understand the basic, at least have an idea of what I want. So I'm providing my mind the raw materials of which ideas can foster from. Whether you like it or not, knowledge at the shoulders of giants you stand upon. There is a level of creativity you cannot have if exposure is absent. Whether you like it or not, a boy in the village would not be as creative as someone in the city. The guy in the city is already exposed to big houses, big cars. There's already a system of advantage than his counterparts. So exposure too is important. You need to put yourself in environments that makes your vision look very small, very, very small. Every home rise to match the level of exposure of the parents. Every organization rise to match the exposure of the leaders. Every life rises to match the level of exposure of the individual. The only reason you desire a luxury car or some kind of hyper yacht is because you've been exposed to that reality previously before social media. Your desire wasn't a boat. Your desire wasn't that luxury item, but you've been exposed to this reality and you desire to produce the outcome. So exposure is important, but do not take the hardest way possible. Engage in a balanced approach. Measure yourself. Always be in the middle of any activity you find yourself in. Now, are there times you need to take things to the extreme before you slow down? Of course. And please, I enjoy working 16 hours a day because that's the kind of person I am. Do not guilt trip yourself or feel bad just because I didn't work X hours means I'm some kind of failure. Dismiss that stereotype. You don't need to work hundreds of hours before you become successful. It's not a prerequisite. You can allocate a certain amount of hours towards an activity and still be great at it. Just that your progress will be limited. So those who take it to the extreme achieve faster than the average individual. So you would still get to that level. The real question is when. Can you believe I've not started tonight's discourse? So the first thing you need to understand to overcome adversity is to not lose your mind. Do not lose your mind. This is a very difficult process. It's easy to say. It's easy for these manifestation gurus to sit in their well manicured garden and make all statements like ignore the debt, ignore the loan, ignore the problem, and just believe it has already happened. But any single person who has faced problem like a debt or some kind of issue that requires immediate attention is versed enough to understand it's not something you can casually ignore. When you owe $400 in rent and the landlord is constantly kicking your door, how do you ignore that kind of reality? Or when I lost $5,000 in the stock market and the brokers is calling up my phone every single time, how do I ignore that reality? For the peasants online who watch this video, you are too innocent to grasp this first point. So this content might not be profitable now. You have to shelf it and revisit. When this content begins to make sense is if you've trammeled or if you explored a path of success, if you've done something worthy of admiration, if you try to achieve something, this would begin to make sense, especially the issue of finances, especially the issue of debt. When you owe someone, when it's due, the amount is due, it's as though all hell breaks loose. So do not lose your mind in the process. One of the mistakes I made at the infancy of my career, facing all of those problems, I lost a lot of money. I would postpone happiness till the result arrives. My friend, that's the quickest way I know to suicide. To pedestalize your joy and happiness till the arrival of a result is the quickest way to death. Understand, every single thing in life is psychological. Your brain is not able to identify what is real and what is thought. It is that objective. If you conceive a thought, what if I lose this person? And you're crying physical tears. The real question, has the event happened? Exactly. But the result is evident. So if you sustain the ability, if you're in that top 1 percentile who can ignore their current reality, ignore the experience, and focus on the vision, the sky is your limit. You would always come out of that trap. The kind of people who never escape poverty, who never escape bad situations, are the ones who always postpone happiness or postpone a certain kind of living till a problem is dissolved. I know individuals who would stop every single thing they are doing, pedestalize their life, pedestalize relationships, stop literally doing things until this problem is resolved, until I pay the rent. It's a terrible way to live, my friend. You would lose your mind. There are times when you get up and life doesn't make sense. What am I doing? Like, why am I here? What is happening? It's in those times you have to look life in the eye and say, you have to kill me than for me to give up. I've shared the story of how I owed rent and the landlord banging the door, making all kinds of threats. You throw my property outside, you do XYZ, you do this. I went back to my room with tears in my eyes and I said, you have to kill me than for me to give up. That's the exact mentality of a victor. That's what it requires to be successful. Some of you enjoy this kind of stories. Yet, when this situation presents itself, you quit. You rob yourself of the same story. That's how you should see problems at platforms to announce you. That's what problems are. Platforms for your manifestations. That's the definition of problems. If you do not have problems, you will be absent stories. If you want to have stories, then problem is the byproduct. Individuals want the view, but they detest the climb. You want the perks that comes with success, but you detest the hard work. You detest the lonely nights. You detest the emotional struggles. Don't lose your mind. You just have to sit, bring a chair, sit in the midst of that storm, sit in the midst of adversity, and tell life, do your worst. You see, there are individuals today, once I observe their character, I can discern if they came victorious out of that process or not. There are tenants whom you threaten with the police and they go, you know what, just call the cops. This is not my first time. Like, they've seen it all. There's nothing you want to do that's a surprise. This is what the Bible says in the book of James. Allow patience have her work in you, that ye might be perfect and wanting nothing. So this situation wants to make you perfect. It is instilling in you the character of the leader. Any leader knows how to deal with stress, high tolerance to pressure. Do not rob yourself of that process. Do not lose your mind. Be joyous. I know it's difficult and I struggle to make statements like be joyous, be happy, ignore the situation. Because I've been there. I know how it feels. I know how it looks. But can you be joyous? Can you ignore every single thing before you and focus on your vision? So let's go to number two for the sake of time. Number two is stick to the game plan. So after losing your mind, you're smart enough to understand that taking the same action and expecting different results is another definition of insanity. So to avoid looking like a fool, you try to edit your course of action. You look for activities to improve upon. As I said, it's an entrepreneurship mindset. It's a mindset of a leader, but you're taking it to the extreme. There are some times where you just have to be consistent, not editing. Consistency. You get up, you wonder, what is this process laddering up to? What are my actions laddering up to? How do I go from here? Every single thing is debilitating. It's in those moments you have to stick to the game plan. Trust that if you were competent enough to map out this game plan. You don't need to edit it before you start. Because those days during my middle phase, I would write up a plan for tomorrow. Upon arrival, before execution, I begin to edit. No, that's not how it works. You take action, you finish the schedule, then when you're done, you can make edits based on feedback, not what you feel. Because any edit is based on theory more than action. And yes, hypothesis is good at the beginning stages, but if you rely on hypothesis alone, you would invariably run into error. So take action, mix action with hypothesis, and you'll be fine. As always, my friends, a pleasure speaking to you. I'll see you in the next one.